All right, guys, I have a faculty member's car here, and she has a common concern. I'm gonna roll down the window so you can kind of get the idea what their concern is. I'm making kind of a turn, and that's what she's complaining about. See if it goes forward. That was reverse. Yep, forward. A little more forward, I guess. Let's go forward now. Went away temporarily. So, squeaky noise, very common concern. So we have got the tire off the car in the front and in the rear. Now we're going to diagnose the car. She did brakes a year ago, and so I already measured the brakes. The brakes are equal to 8mm. So she doesn't need, actually, oh, it's a little bit thicker. You don't have to see it. I'm just going to show. Yeah, so it's equal to 10mm on the outside and on the inside. So the pads are fine. What I think happened was she had the brakes done, and they just put a brake reline, or which means that they put pads on, new pads, but they didn't machine the rotor. If you look at the rotor, it's glazed, but not only that, it changes the color as you go out to this outer edge. And there's a ring right here going all the way around. So I think, and this is the wheel that's squeaking, I think what we need to do is take the pads off, sand the pads, and we need to bevel the edges. We also need to put stop squeak where the pad contacts the caliper, right on this part of the caliper and the pad right in here, and also on the inside. We need to bevel the edge of the pad all the way around, and then we take a Scotch-Brite and we'll Scotch-Brite this. I'm not going to machine it because I don't have time today. So we're just going to try that and see if it works. It's a faculty member's car. If it doesn't work, she'll bring it back, and then we'll just machine the rotor. So worst case scenario, she's going to bring it back. We machine the rotor. Best case scenario, we take this apart. We scuff up with a Scotch-Brite the rotor. We sand the pad, and we put stop squeak on. Let's go ahead and check the rear now. Okay, I put my mask on for COVID because we're working with the rear drum brakes. And I'm sure these drum brakes are going to have a ton of dust when I take them off. So the COVID protection also is going to protect us from the dust. But if you didn't have a mask on, you want to hold your breath so you don't breathe all this dust right here. So this is the brake dust from the rear drum brakes. So drum brakes need to be serviced. Okay. So anyways, I think the squeak was coming from the front, but if we look at this, we have plenty of shoe on the front primary shoe. We have plenty of shoe on the rear secondary shoe. So this is the primary, this is secondary. I see a little dampness around the wheel cylinder, so I'm going to pull this back and I'm going to look inside and verify there's no fluid inside here. And let's see. It's a little damp right there. So this wheel cylinder is starting to wear out. You can kind of see a little bit. It's starting to wear out, but it's not bad yet. So bottom line, we need to do a rear drum brake service on this. It's never been done. And I could tell it's never been done because I could just see the amount of brake dust that is on this. I don't even know if these drums were taken off when they did the inspection for the front. So we're going to do the rear drum brake service. All right, so we're going to do a brake service right now. I'm going to start with my drum. I'm going to clean this off with some brake clean. Let that drip. Then I'm gonna go ahead and hold my breath, and I'm gonna spray this entire drum brake and get all the dust off, get it all clean. It's really important. Brake dust can cause brake squeaking. So it's important that we do the drum brakes service, because the actual dust gets on there like you saw, and it creates a squeak, but usually on real light braking. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. Now we're gonna grab some emery cloth, okay? This is emery cloth because I'm gonna actually rip it the same width as the drum shoe. So that way I can fit that in there. And I'm gonna sand this so I get new lines. You don't wanna breathe that dust coming off. Okay, do the front. And I like using this as a solid belt, like sanding, so that you don't develop flat spots. Too many people do this and then they get a flat spot. So that's why I was doing the method I was showing. Okay, so we cleaned it, we sanded it, now we're gonna adjust it. This is called a brake spoon, okay? So I'm gonna put my drum on, I'm gonna spin it. You should be able to see it spin one time, and you could and stop and hear a scraping. It's going like almost 2 times around. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust this, okay? Here's the adjustment lever. The lever goes up to adjust, so I need to push it this way. See, go up right here, and it should make a clicking sound. There we go. And then 3 to 5 turns. We're gonna put this back on. There you go, a little more. Try it again. Still a little more. We're getting close though. You can tell it's starting to grab it. So maybe just 3 clicks this time. 3 clicks. 1, 2, and that's about a half. 3. Don't want to go too far because the adjustments are hard to back off. There we go. And I can hear it scraping. Here's what's happening, so it makes sense to you. It's really hard to get off because this drum does have a ridge on it. So this was a little hard to take off, and it's because it has a little ridge right here. This little ridge is catching and dragging across the shoe, making the drum hard to come off. And I just noticed something. I don't like these grooves. So someone did a brake drum in the rear and they didn't machine the drum. You can see these grooves, they're all the way across. So just a poor job in doing a brake job. They changed the shoes, they did not machine the drum. Because you can see it's snug going on, and then once when it gets on, it frees up because that lip gets over the shoe. So I'm okay with what I did. I got about 12 clicks on it. So I'm gonna do the same on the other side. So this side, I put the drum on, and when I spun it, it didn't even go a quarter turn. When I spin a drum after I adjust it, I want it to go like a full turn. And so I went a little too far. I want to show you how to back this off. So tightening it was this way, and it clicked. So to back it off, you got to pull the adjuster off of the wheel down inside here, and then go the opposite way. So I'm gonna back it off like 3 turns. or not 3 turns, so about 3 to 4 clicks. And these wheels, they're sometimes really difficult to get in to go backwards. There we go. There we go. All right, now let's see what we got. I put my drum back on, center these shoes a little bit, and see how we are on the adjustment on this. There we go. You can hear it hitting all the way around. Yeah, I like the way that feels. So I went too far by about 5 clicks. So we're good. So this video is for my advanced and my beginners. Always make sure you go in the right direction. So this is going clockwise. I want to go counterclockwise, the way it locks counterclockwise. We're going to take off these caliper bolts right here in the front. Okay, then I'm going to get a bungee cord. All the carts have a bungee cord. I'm going to hold that caliper, hold it up out of the way after I take this off. Here's my 2 bolts. We could put them in a magnetic tray like this, or you could screw them back in. But the last place I want to put a bolt like this is in my cart, because when the cart leaves the car, then I'm not it's going to be very hard for me to find that bolt. So the bolts always stay with the car. And then I'm going to hang this caliper up because I don't want it hanging from the flex line right here. And then I can take my pads. And remember, these pads are in great shape. Here's the inboard pad. Here's the outboard pad. And I already see a problem right here. See this ridge right here? Something got sucked up into this pad right here. And you can see there's a very sharp edge right here. And it got displaced by this one edge. Something like a rock or pebble got sucked up in here. The outboard pad doesn't have it. The inboard pad, you could feel a ridge. So that's a problem. That would cause it. So when I do a brake job, I always like to bevel my edges. And you can see whoever made these pads put a bevel edge here and here on the leading and trailing edge, but they don't put it on the edge that's on the outside of the rotor, like here or inside. So I always put a bevel on this, a bevel on this. Sometimes I do it in the middle. So that could be a problem, and we're going to sand those. Okay. So I have a die grinder, 90 degree with a Scotch-Brite pad, really good for brakes. And I'm going to bevel that sharp edge that you could see right here. Just a slight bevel. You don't have to do too much. There we go. And do the factory edge. And then do this edge. I'm going to do the surface and get that shape. And there you go. Beveled edge all the way around. You can do a little bit right in here. And that's pads done. And you're going to do this for all 4 pads. So I got both pads completely beveled and sanded. So now let's do the rotor. Now I'll spin this rotor as I do it. So the object is to get it scuffed up a little bit and to take any ridge off the outside and the inside. Remember, I said that they probably changed the pads, but they did nothing to the rotor. So that means there's an edge here and an edge here that you have to clear in addition to scuffing it up. So I will do the other side and then go to the passenger side and do both sides of the rotor as well. All right, so now the last step is, you can see this is the inboard pad where the piston connects. This is the outboard pad, which is where the caliper housing connects. These are areas where they squeak. These protective backings right here that you can see clipped on are supposed to prevent squeaks, but these are kind of cheap pads because this is kind of like a just only metal, and some of the better pads, this would be rubberized. So to kind of make up for having cheap pads, I'm going to actually take a little bit of this, and I'm only going to put it where the pad contacts the rotor. Okay, so I'm not going to put a lot. A lot of mechanics will use a little bit of grease here. This is actually disc brake quiet, and so I'm just going to put a thin layer right here and a thin layer right where the piston hits this backing right here. These are areas where pads tend to squeak. Okay, and that's it. And you don't want to get this anywhere near where the pads are. So this is bad. So I'm going to take that off and that off, and then we can put these on right here. I'm going to put the outboard pad on. Okay, put the inboard pad on the inboard right here. And then I'm going to take my caliper, which has been hanging properly. And I'm going to slide that right over. Put my pin in, or bolt in. And my other bolt. Now, so this is a detail students tend to neglect. These are the caliper pins right here with the rubber boot. There's a flat spot right here that has to be oriented properly to the caliper for it to screw in properly. So like down here, I kind of have to turn it. There we go. So a lot of times you need to turn this caliper pin so the flat spot lines up with the caliper properly. Now we can go ahead and tighten this down. So I couldn't tighten it because this was spinning. I have to hold this in place or it won't properly tighten. So you can see it drawing that caliper pin in, and that's what should happen. But if I allowed this to spin, you wouldn't be able to tighten it properly. So I'll do the same with the bottom. So we scuffed up the rotor, we sanded the pads and beveled the edges. We put disc brake quiet on the back of each pad. We torqued down our caliper properly. If that doesn't take care of the squeak, then there's two other possibilities. We got to machine the rotor, or she needs to buy a better grade pad, because cheap pads tend to squeak. We just got done with a Nissan Rogue that had a squeaking problem. Now we have a Chevrolet HHR that had a squeaking problem too. And this is an example of what you're looking for with the rotor. He had the pads replaced once before, and they just put them on an old rotor, didn't machine it. And look at this groove right here. That groove is causing a squeaking noise. He said it's in every once in a while, but we have no choice. We have to machine this rotor, and it's starting to get a really large outer lip. So this outer lip is a problem, but this groove's the main problem. We already measured this rotor. There is enough machining tolerance to take that groove out. Okay, so let me show you how I did that. This is what we call a vernier caliper, and they're really easy to use. Close the jaws, make sure it's on 0. Okay, and then we're going to just open it up, and then we're going to just slide it over, and we're going to measure this. Okay, and our measurement is, and I'll get it off the, so the raised 1 right here is 1 inch, but where the measuring line is the edge. We're below 1 inch. So if you look at the dial, then the 0 would be 1 inch. We are 10 thousandths plus another 2, it looks like another 4 thousandths, so 14 thousandths from 1 inch. That would put us at 9.86. In a way, I could get that measurement as well. Let's get it to where we were. There. We were at a 9, so 0.986. Okay, now I don't have the specs in my hand, but in my head. But the other thing we need to go over is there's a groove, so I need to measure the depth of that groove with this end, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to measure that depth of that groove. So again, expand it, and I'm just going to run this down till it hits. Okay, and then I'm going to read it. So I'm on 0, so that groove is 12 thousandths. So the rotor was 0.986. The depth of that groove is 12 thousandths. So 986 minus 12, that's putting us at 974 is what our actual measurement if at the base of this groove. Okay, and we'll look at the spec later, but I have enough machining to machine this rotor. So we're going to use an air ratchet with a 14 millimeter deep socket. Make sure that this is turning counterclockwise, which it is. And we're going to pop those bolts off real fast. Okay, and I don't want to take this one out all the way until I get the sides done. That one's a little bit tighter. Take this caliper off. We're going to hang that up like we did the other car. Okay, now we're ready to take our pads off. And then we're going to do our mounting bracket bolts. It's easier to get underneath for this one. These should probably be really tight. And again, start one and then go to the other. You never want to take one all the way off because otherwise the bracket will move when you do this. And here's our rotor. Okay, now I'm going to film Mr. Lear doing it with a ratchet on the other side.
Make sure I don't lose those. I left the pads in, I can pop them out now.
All data, repair, and Mr. Lear is going to be using this same program. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a 2010 Chevrolet, and it's I need to pick a Chevrolet truck. So let's see, 2010 Chevy truck, and then HHR, and it's a 2.2. And then I'm going to go to specifications, mechanical, and then I want to find brake disc rotor. And then here's my spec, and brake rotor discard thickness is 0.898, and we are at 0.974, so we could actually take off almost 80 thousandths of an inch on and still be within spec. And we'll probably only take out a half of that. So we want to check the mounting bracket bolt torque. We found these two bolts on the all data, and we need to torque those to 96 foot-pounds. To find the disc brake caliper slide pin bolts, we needed to go to pad replacement. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go down to pad replacement, and then over here removal and replacement, disc brake pads, go down to installation, and then install procedure, and there we go. There's the bolt, and the bolt needs to be torqued to 26 foot-pounds for the slide pin. So now we're going to go ahead and machine the rotors. I'm going to use on the one rotor a quick chuck, and then on the other rotor we're going to use a different adapter. So a quick chuck is just a regular chuck. It takes a chuck key, which is right here, and that goes in right here, and we expand and contract these jaws. So first off, we need to find an adapter that fits inside our rotor, and you want it to fit all the way the largest one. So I could go up one size. Good. And then this is beveled to cover this chuck. So I'm going to slide that on. There we go. Okay, now a rotor, this is called the hat of a rotor, okay? You want to put the hat on top of the quick chuck, and then you're going to tighten the jaw. Now, I did make it easier. I put a little arrow for which chuck, which hole does each chuck. So here's one that goes on the other side for larger rotors. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now you could videotape inside, and you can see those clamping on to my rotor. And just tighten that down. Now that quick chuck is part of my rotor. I slide that rotor on, and then I'm going to need some adapters. So I'll put this adapter on. You always need a vibration dampener, and then a nut. A nut has two sides. One has no threads. One of the threads go to the end, and I could use that. Slide that up. Then I'm going to grab my wrench and just give it a little pop. It doesn't have to be really tight. And now my rotor is part of my machine, and we're ready to start setting our bits. So always check your bits to make sure they're tight. There's two bits on each side. They should be nice sharp edge. Loosen these lock nuts that will allow me to bring these all the way back in, because I don't know how thick the rotor is. I'm going to center it inside there. Those are ready. Put on a silencing band. And now I could loosen this top nut and line this up. And there's a dowel right here to bring this in. Oh, someone left this in gear. Always make sure you leave this in neutral, so then I can bring this in. And as I bring this in, I'm going to be centering this onto the rotor. And I always, this line right here, I always want it to be in parallel with the machine, and we are. And then I just tighten this down. Now we bring our bits in just till they start to touch, or before they touch. So not going to bring them till they touch until I get the machine started. I'm going to get them close right there. All right, we're ready. So some other adjustments. This needs to be loose so the cutting bits can slide on this bar. This one needs to be really tight. This is for drums. We're not doing drums. So this needs to be tight. And I have an arrow up here because I want to make sure that you know that this engagement needs to be off. Pretty much you're never going to use this this part of the brake lathe for a rotor. Okay, we're going to use it for drums, but we're doing rotors today. So all you really need to do is this needs to be locked and this needs to be an off. That's set right, this set right. Let's turn the machine on and let's start our bits. So I'm gonna run this down until I do a scratch cut. And I'm just gonna scratch it. Just a scratch. Now, if you look at the scratch up here, you'll see it pulsating, but it's actually a really good all the way around scratch. If it was really just going off and on, then I would have excessive runout and I want to reposition the rotor. Let's check this side. And I'm going to just run the bit down till it touches and scratch. And again, the scratch, this side is kind of pulsating, so we do have some runout. So let me show you what we do if we have excessive runout here. So we're going to back these bits off right here, and then if you were to wanted to reposition this, you would loosen the nut up here and loosen the chuck, and you need to rotate the rotor one turn. I'm happy with this side, so I'm not. But technically, if you have excessive runout, you want to loosen this nut, and just slightly rotate this a half a turn and then retighten it and check with a scratch cut again. So we're ready, so let's turn it on. I'm gonna run these down till they hit again, there. And then I'm gonna lock the lock nut. And there's an outer ridge here and an inner ridge. I'm gonna take that off right now. And then I'm gonna run this all the way down until I get the inner ridge. I'm really paying attention to see if the rotor gets thicker. And you can see it starting to cut in a little more. If it does, just back these off just a hair. And then tighten the nut and run it. You can see a difference right there, okay? So let's run this down, and I want to take that inner ridge off. And there's the inner ridge. And I'm just turning it in by hand. Once when I got that inner ridge off, which I do, now I could go ahead and set my bit. So I'm gonna run this to 0. All right, so I wasn't able, this one's jammed, but I was able to set this at 0. Now to set our bits, I always say loosen the lock nut and turn this 3 notches. 1, 2, 3, that's 6 thousandths of an inch, because each of these is 2 thousandths, which is 0.002. And I'm going to do the same here. Each notch is 2 thousandths. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to lock this down. And then we're going to actually do a slow cut. Forward is fast, backward is slow. I'm going to lift this up and put it in slow. And then this is going to engage. And you'll see it start cutting. And we're gonna wait till it gets all the way at the end. And you can see right there, it's starting to clean it up. The reason why I'm doing a slow cut is because I'm gonna try and get this rotor clean on the first pass. The other rotor that has the groove is gonna take a couple passes. While our rotor is machining, we could go ahead and check our caliper sliding pins to make sure they're sliding. And both of these are working really nice. I'm gonna peel this back and you can see the grease in here, okay? So I'm very happy with how these are sliding. So I'm not gonna clean these or do anything to disrupt that, because the grease is really in good condition. These are in good condition. Let's go check the other side. So again, feel your slide pins, because remember those calipers need to slide because they're only a 1 piston caliper. I'm going to pull it back. I'm going to check my grease, see the condition of the grease. If it was all crusty and dried out, then I would replace that grease. But no problems as far as sliding, and the grease is in good shape. I'm not going to mess with these. So this is the rotor that has the groove in it, and I want to show you, you could see the ridge that it creates in the pad right here, and that creates a inconsistency and possibly makes the noise. The noise could also be caused because the rotor itself is glazed. So this will come out just as nice as the rotor that we're machining right now. So follow me over here and see how we're doing. We're almost there, and you can see how nice this rotor is machining up right here. It used to be glazed like this, and you can see I'm taking off as little as possible. This is 6/1000 of an inch, and then on this side it's 6/1000 of an inch. Very little amount. The other rotor I got to take off 11 thousandths more than this side, or this rotor, but this is going to solve a lot of the squeaking problems. So we just cleaned this rotor up. It just finished cutting, so I'm going to turn the machine off. I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to move it out of the way like this, because what I want to do is I want to go ahead and do a non-directional finish. So I'm going to take a piece of emery cloth, and I'm actually going to put my hand here, and I'm going to sand this to change the pattern of the rotor. Come on this side, do it on both sides. Just a little bit. So that way, you look at the pattern, it's a crisscross pattern instead of a circular record-like pattern. So you can see the crisscross, beautiful. We're done with this rotor. We're gonna take the band off right here. We're gonna actually loosen the nut here. This is left-handed thread, so right-handed tight, or sorry, right the tight, left, or right the loosen, left to tighten. Take this nut off, set it aside for my other rotor. Take that rotor off, set that up where it was, and I need that arrow. And then that loosens the chuck, and then we got that to go back on our car. Right over here. Beautiful. Look at that finish. Nice finish. Let's go grab the other rotor. So the rotor that we were just talking about is right here. But we're going to use a different adapter now. We're not going to use a quick chuck. So I want to take this adapter off, because I want to show you you have choices. Automotive, you always have choices on how to do a repair. And I'm going to put on a hub. So this is a hubless rotor. It has no hub in here. So we create a hub, whether it's the quick chuck or this. This is going to be my hub to mount it on. We're going to mount the rotor right in between these two pieces, the cone and the bevel edge here. So now we go ahead and mount this. Put on my adapters that were on here before. Okay, left to tighten, left-handed thread. Tighten that down. Now I take this big nut off and bring all this off. Grab my rotor, and this rotor is going to sit with the hat. Here's the hat. It's going to sit right on that cone. So we want the hat facing out, and then we're going to take that cone, and that's going to center it. And then these are just spacers, is all they are. So we get those spacers in, and then we get our nut. Left-handed thread, so tighten that down. And then what I like to do on this one is I like to spin it as I tighten it, and that centers it. We need a big wrench, and we're going to just tighten that like we did this one. So now this rotor is part of this machine. We're going to recenter, back off our bits, and recenter this. Bring it in. Oh, I forgot my belt. Definitely need our silencing belt. Oh. Gotta reposition myself, so I'll get that on there. Good. And we're gonna silence. Oh, I did what the last student did. I left it in gear. Make sure you put that in neutral. Even I do those mistakes. Center this. And you remember, I want this parallel. Okay, good. Lock this down. It doesn't have to be really tight. And then we'll do our scratch test. I see a little bit of run out here. And you see how it hits just, and it creates a pulsating problem right here, a scratch. So I'm gonna back this off, and now this one's a lot easier to change the run out. So I'm gonna loosen this, and I'm gonna rotate this a half a turn, retighten it, and then I wanna reposition my bit in a new location. I'll bring it in a little bit, and then I'm going to do a scratch, and I want to see if that scratch is in the same place as the other scratch. And it looks, oh, you see it pulsating? I do see it pulsating back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So let's go ahead and do another scratch. We keep doing this until we get two scratches that are side by side. And what you're trying to do is get this rotor as square to the machine as possible. And I'm going to bring this bit in a little bit more. And let's check it again. Yeah, I see two now that are the same. So right here, you see that? So the first mount and the second mount were good. The first and the third. The second time I tried it, I got it into a different position, 180 out. So we're good here. Let's go ahead and set our bits now. Run both of these down till they hit. Run both of these down. I'm gonna lock them down, run them out to get that outer lip out. There's that outer lip. Look how thick that is. Now we're gonna run it in to get the inner lip. There we go, and we're gonna go 3 notches. So I'm gonna loosen this. I'm gonna go 3 notches with my cut. 1, 2, 3. Tighten it, loosen. 1, 2, 3. And now we're gonna do a fast cut because we're gonna have to do more than one. So I'm just gonna go fast, because I'm not going to clear this up on the first pass. It's going to take 2 passes, probably 3 passes. Better. Yep, there's still a little edge there. Almost got it on that first pass, which is fine because you never want to put a rotor on the car with a fast cut. You always want to do a slow cut for the last cut. So this is fine. We're going to go in and we're going to go another cut, but we're going to do it slow like we did the other rotor. So let's let this finish. It's looking really good though. The other side cleaned up. So if you look at this side cleaned up. This side did not clean up. So I'm going to take a deeper cut on this side than this side. So put it in neutral, run it all the way down again. All the way till I get to the end. There we go. And then I'm going to go 3 notches on this side. 1, 2, 3. But this side, I'm only going to go 1 notch. There we go. So 2 thousandths I'm taking off this side I'm taking 6 thousandths, and now we go with a slow cut. And that will clean that right up. But this will take obviously longer to machine. We're machining the second rotor right now, so we might as well talk about something else. Brake pad and rotor burnishing. I just did 2 cars for squeaky brakes. Now I need to go for a test drive on both of them. I have the one done, which is the Nissan. The HHR we're actually still working on, but we need to burnish the brakes. So what is burnishing? It's a road test the vehicle under safe conditions while obeying all traffic laws, of course. Do not attempt any maneuvers that jeopardize vehicle control. Okay. Burnishing the brake pads and brake rotors is necessary in order to ensure that the braking surfaces are properly prepared after service has been performed on the disc brake. This procedure should be performed whenever the disc brake rotors have been refinished or replaced, or whenever the disc brakes pads have been replaced. And in the case with the Nissan, I sanded them. Select a smooth road with little or no traffic. Accelerate the vehicle to 30 miles an hour. Use care to avoid overheating the brakes. Using moderate to firm pressure. So apply the brakes to bring the vehicle to a stop. Do not allow the brakes to lock. Repeat this 2 to 3 times until approximately 20 stops have been completed. Allow sufficient cooling periods between stops in order to properly burnish the brake pads. So a burnish, what it really means is you're breaking in your brake pads and rotors by driving 30 miles an hour and applying firm to moderate pressure and stop the vehicle. Okay, and you do it 2 to 3 times. So now, bring the camera on me. This is what I tell my customers, because a lot of times being a teacher, I don't have the opportunity to really go burnish brakes. So I tell the customer or the faculty member, drive your car to 30 miles an hour and do a panic stop. Like, oh shoot, there's a stop sign. Like you would hit the brakes hard. So hit the brakes hard or firm at 30 miles an hour, bring it to a stop and do it 3 times. After 3 times, drive a longer distance and allow the brakes to cool. And then the brakes aren't really broken in until like a 10 to 20 more stops. But those 3 panic stops, 30 miles an hour, panic stop, 30 miles an hour, panic stop, 30 miles an hour, panic stop is what I call burnishing your brakes. So we passed our spot that was the low spot, and now look at that. Perfect. We just got this last little bit. You can see a big difference between a slow cut and a fast cut. Never put a brake rotor on the car with a fast cut. Always a slow cut. So that's why it was good to clean that up on the fast cut and then do a final cut on a slow cut. We're good. When this is done, we're going to actually measure it and then assemble our brakes. Okay, last step, non-directional finish. Change that pattern on both sides. So there's 1, 2. Beautiful finish. Let's take this, the bits out of the way. Take my silencer off. Take my wrench, go right to loosen. This is left-handed. Take this off. I always want my students to put these back on so you don't lose these individual pieces. And then I can take off now the nut for the machine, right to loosen. These right here, I'm okay if you put these here or you can put them up there, but then this hub needs to be kept together and set on the table right here. And then the last step is to clean my machine. You know, I get it, the bell rings, you got to go to your next class, but really, how long does it take to clean the machine off so it's ready for the next brake job or the next student, right? And I just dump it in here. When it gets a lot in here, then for hazardous waste, we put them in these sealed locking containers until we have enough to recycle them. So we're ready to start assembling our brakes.
Okay, we're getting ready for reassembly. I got to do a little cleaning before I start to put it all back together. I got my can of brake clean here, and I just want to clean off a couple of areas on here, right where the pads sit down inside the bracket for the caliper. So I'm just going to kind of flush that off a little bit and then give it a good wipe. Get any of the old brake dirt out of there. And then the same thing on the other side. A little spritz. Okay, now this is ready to go back on. I got my bolts already ready to go. And the only thing I'm going to have to do here is sort of set the rotor up a little bit so I can slide this over, line up those bolt holes on the back, and I'm ready to roll. Remember to start everything by hand. One started makes it a little bit easier to get the second one going. Make sure you start these all by hand, a couple turns, and then I like to use my power tool, my air tool, save a bunch of time. This is the disc brake quiet. It's like a glue that you put on the back of the pads, and it reduces any chance of squeaking. What I do is I take a look at the old pad, the pattern where the caliper went, and I'm going to put this right in the same area where the caliper touches. So on the outboard pad it looks like that, and on the inboard pad it's like a little circle. Sometimes I'll spread that out with my finger a little bit. I already put the inboard pad in. We have the outboard pad to insert, and I kind of put them in at a slight bit of an angle and then just push and twist. That usually works. I didn't get the bottom in. There we go. And before I can fit this over, I have to push the piston back to make room for the new thick pad. So let me go grab that tool. Okay, I love this new tool that Mr. Fleming got. This just fits right in between the caliper, piston, and the body, and then you just ratchet it. And those two pads on here spread apart, and you can see it's forcing the piston back nice and evenly and smoothly, and that's what I want to do. You never want to jam it back at an angle. You can actually get it wedged in there and damage the caliper. Doesn't need much force. Once you get it all the way back in, this will stop. Just make it a little snug, and then I'm going to switch directions right here, and I can take this out. And now you'll see the pistons pushed back perfectly. And so I can fit that over the brand new pads. I'm going to take it off this little strap, and one of the things I want to make sure is that I don't kink this hose. If you have this twisted and you try to put it back on, it'll cause all kinds of brake issues. So make sure you get that straightened out, slide it on, and then I like to grab one of the caliper bolts and get it started on top, and then I'll work on the one down at the bottom. Now it'll hang off there, and I can get my second bolt easily lined up. There we go. Now you can switch sockets. Air tools, always nice and fast. And we're all set. Okay, last thing we want to do is make sure everything's torqued properly. I got my torque wrench set to 26 foot-pounds, and I'm looking for the green light on here. And right there is torqued to 26, and now I can do the top bolt. Right there, 26 pounds. Caliper bracket bolts, we're going to go ahead and we adjusted this to 96 foot-pounds. And again, I'm looking for that green light. Right there. Perfect. Everything's torqued now.
The driver's side was the side with the groove, so I'm gonna definitely need to measure this to make sure we're in spec. So I'm gonna expand this, and I'm gonna contract it. And if you look, we're above the 9 right here, so we're at 0.957. So 957 thousandths, and the spec was 896. So we're completely in the good. We could use this rotor. We don't have to worry about being under spec or where we have to throw it away, because that's what we're really dealing with. We'd have to throw it away. I already have my stop squeak on my pads, so that's good. I'm going to go ahead and mount my mounting bracket on here.
A lot of torque.
Yeah, it is a lot of torque. There we go. Last one. There we go. 96 foot-pounds. So we're going to clean that little pad where the pad mounts right here, top and bottom. There's a lot of videos are out there that you should always clean your rotor after you machine it. You can see the dust coming off. Okay, so brake clean is the only cleaner you want to use. They do use another cleaner they sell. It's more like a soap, but I believe in the brake clean. Put our pads on. So here's the outer pad, and now I'm going to grab my inner pad. And I do have students who put pads on backwards. There's a metal backing, and then there's the pad. You can put these on backwards, and then you make a horrendous noise when you hit your brakes. So make sure you put them on the right way. Now, here's our caliper. Let me go ahead and get this off. So I got my caliper off the bungee cord. I'm going to flip this over. Okay, keep in mind you flipped it, but you got to not coil your brake line when you put it back together. But here's the tool that I'm going to use to push the piston in. This is a Lyle tool. It works just as good as the other one. You just stick it in and you just slowly apply this, and it'll push that piston right in. Really important that you do this. You won't get the caliper on with the new thick pads without doing this and get the caliper all the way in. And it looks like I'm about there. There we go. To release it, push the little button and then push it together. Look at that, beautiful caliper piston all pushed in right there. They're good. We're going to unravel our brake line, make sure it's not kinked. Slide that on. Now we can go ahead and get our mounting bracket bolts, our caliper pin bolts on here. Down here, here's a problem that students have. So the caliper pin has a flat side. We talked about that with the other brake job. I can't start this bolt because the hole's not aligned right. So I actually need to pull this off, and I need to rotate this so that way the pin is in the right position. There we go. And now I should be able to start that bolt. So again, we had to rotate this again to get the sliding pin in the right position, and then my bolt started like butter. Beautiful. Get my ratchet going the right way. All right, so 26 foot-pounds. Watch the green light. Oh, went a little too far. So I'm gonna loosen this, and then I'm gonna go a little slower, which is a lot of mistakes students make. Go slow, get that green light on. You could easily go past torque spec because you're using a long long handle. So again, you got to watch that light as it approaches and slow down on how you're torquing. It's just a good technique.
Okay, so the last thing that Mr. Fleming has to do is get up inside there, and he's going to have to pump the brake pedal probably about 3 times. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring the pads up against the rotor so that when he does apply them, you actually get some stopping action. If you don't do that, the first couple of times you hit the brake pedal, you'll have no brakes.
So already done 4 of the 5 lug nuts. We want to use a torque stick. I'm doing 90 foot-pound rated torque stick, and then we'll torque the lug nuts by hand with a torque wrench to 100. Okay, you want to use this, and you want to torque it with a hand torque wrench, because all the good we did could be ruined by simply improperly torquing these, whether in a circle or too high a spec. You'll warp the rotor that we just machined. So the torquing of the lug nuts is just as important a step as any of the other steps I've shown. 100 foot-pounds, get out my torque wrench or lug nut, and then you're just gonna go until it gets to green. And go on the start pattern. It doesn't take long to use a hand torque, and yet it's a step that too many people forget it. Just don't do. Okay, go over to the other side. Let's do that. I mean, literally a minute worth of work to get it done properly. And you go through an hour worth of work. Oop, that one I went too far. You go through an hour worth of work and then you throw it all away in the last step. Done. So we're back in the Nissan with that squeak. We're going to verify that the squeak is fixed real quick by going in reverse. And release the parking brake. And by the way, the parking brake, 5 to 8 clicks is what I always say. Perfect. By tightening the rear drum brakes during the clean, sand, and adjust, it tightened up our parking brake hand adjustment. So we're good on that. Let's see how it brakes. Windows are down, and I don't hear any squeaking. Light brake in, we're good. We're in the parking lot, as you can see. Let's try forward. Yeah, we're good. So let's go do a burnish. Get it up to 30. Panic stop. No one's behind me. There we go. There's my 3. That's called burnishing your brakes. And that concludes this video.